You guys having a good conference?
Yes.
Yeah? Good deal. Okay, so we talk a lot about the different technologies and whatnot, but one of the things that is often absent is how do we understand, what the process of figuring out what kind of technologies we need? How do we improve the processes that we're going to facilitate with these technologies? And then I want to go through like a top common myths, about 12 myths about kind of requirements gathering in the mobility and enterprise wearable space. So this is the clicker, right? Okay, requirements gathering, a lot of people think that, requirements gathering is easy, right? Just ask people what they want. The problem with that is what you end up getting is a desirement, not a requirement. People will give you a Christmas list a mile long, and everything sounds good in theory, but until you get in there and actually start to test some of these assumptions, you really don't know what's going to work or not. So we're going to talk about some of these cultural myths. Myth number one, anybody heard this? What is it? The customer's what? Always right. Absolutely false. Okay? I don't mean it to be rude, but generally the customers don't really know what they need. They know what they want. Again, with a Christmas list, they'll give you a list a mile long. And the funny thing is, I'm a technologist and I teach people about this kind of stuff, and even I'm subject to this. When I go in and buy a brand new smartphone, I'm looking at how many megapixels is it, what are all the cool features and doodads and all that type of stuff. But realistically, I only use a very small percentage of that stuff. So customers can't be objective. They have their want list, but that may not necessarily be what they need. They know the process, but they don't necessarily know the technologies. So as technologists, it's absolutely crucial that we have to almost know better than our customers do and help them to co-discover what they're trying to accomplish with this technology. Good requirements are not found or collected. They're actually co-discovered, right? So you need to partner with your customers at the hip and walk through, first of all, so I go in and I say, look, I'm the dummy here. You're the expert. You know what you do all the time. Help me understand. You have to go on bended knee and with hat in hand and sincerely mean it. I need to understand what it is you're doing. Help me to understand your processes. And if you're willing to kind of check the credentials and your pride at the door and go in there with a sense of humility, a lot of times they'll open up through this process. And a lot of times you'll get these kind of epiphany moments where they discover that what they thought they were pursuing isn't at all what they needed. Right? So gathering requirements is easy, you just ask them. Again, you get the desirement, not the requirement. It's all good in theory. A lot of times too, folks are too close to the process, too close to the forest to see to see the trees. And so until you go in there with them and you co-discover their process with them, they don't really understand the steps. They've automated these things to a large degree. Human factors is just glorified common sense. The way that people behave is actually very different from how we think we behave. So there's a really good book. Anybody hear of a book called Predictably Irrational? Hands? A guy named Dan Irely wrote the book. If you get a chance, read it if you're interested in that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Another one called Sway by Ori, I think, Brofman. I hope I'm not slaughtering the names too badly. What they go through in there is they talk about how, we like to pride ourselves on being these logical creatures, and we like to collect all the data, and all things being equal, we will measure and weigh the data and we'll make the best decision. It's not at all true. It's completely false. So in the book Predictably Irrational, Dan gives an example where he has this dream date scenario. And so he goes to these students and he says, look, you get to go on this dream date and you get to pick between Brad Pitt, blonde-headed guy, blue eyes, kind of younger, athletic, or George Clooney, kind of older, genteel, type guy. And then the third condition was either ugly Brad Pitt or ugly George Clooney. So what's interesting about this is when he offered Brad Pitt, to get the ugly Brad Pitt or George Clooney, he would put their picture in Photoshop and kind of mess it up a little bit. So when he offered Brad Pitt, ugly Brad Pitt, George Clooney, more than 50% chose Brad Pitt. When he did George Clooney, ugly George Clooney, Brad Pitt, more than 50% chose George Clooney. Why would that be? Anybody have any ideas? Okay, the reason why is because at our core we're difference engines. We're really good at discerning discrepancies between things that are very much alike, very similar, right? And so we're drawn to those type of scenarios, and it sways our opinion and how we think about things. So the reason why I'm sharing this with you, this kind of stuff is really critically important when we think about designing a solution, because we're impacted by things like this all the time and we're not even aware of it, all right? To find out, just ask an expert. You'll find the smartest person knows how to do this. Old Joe, back in the back of the shop, been here 40 years. He's forgotten more about this stuff than we'll ever hope to know. We'll just ask him, and he'll tell us the best way to do it. Absolutely wrong, right? The reason why is because, again, back to this automation thing. We're creatures of automation. Joe probably isn't even aware of what he does. He just does it, right? Anybody ever, you drive into work this morning or during the week, how much about that travel into work do you remember? Not much, right? What are you thinking about? You're thinking about the meeting. You're thinking about, I got to pick up the kids from soccer practice. It's my anniversary this weekend, that kind of stuff. And the reason you can do that is because we're really good at automating things. Anybody ever get in their car and they have an automatic and they switch cars and now they have a stick shift? Which is kind of funny because, by the way, it's almost a theft deterrent device anymore. There's not very many people that can drive those, it seems like. Anybody have that experience? All right, you're reaching for that phantom gear shift and then you kind of chuckle to yourself because you're embarrassed that you are trying to shift a gear shift that's not there. I'm sorry, say again? Press on the non-existent clutch. Yeah, press on the non-existent clutch. I've done that a lot. It's embarrassing, but at any rate. So those are kind of a couple of good examples of ways that we automate things and we're not even aware. So you guys have some crayons on your tables there. I want somebody from each of the tables. Grab those crayons. I'm going to demonstrate this further for you. And this is fun. Just to kind of further illustrate this, and this is something you can go home, show your kids, show your neighbors, your buddies at work, cheap bar trick, it's kind of fun. Anybody here have a thing called the Stroop effect? Hands? Okay, so you guys are going to have fun with this. And I think I might have Matt, I see Matt back there walking around. I think I'm going to have him write these down too. So what I want you to do, open up your crayons and write down a list of words, okay, and they're going to be color words. Now, the word that you write has to be a color other than the crayon that you write it with. So for example, if I have a red crayon, I can write blue or green or yellow. If I have a green crayon, I write red or blue, right? Write down a list, write 12 to 15 words. I'll give you a couple seconds to try that. I'm sorry. So write down a list of color words, like 12 to 15 words in a list. Let's go with 15. Write down a list of 15 color words. Whatever the color of the crayon that you write it down with, write a different word. So I want you to have all the words to be different colors. But if you're writing the word red, like write it in blue or a green crayon. Does that make sense? It has to be something other than what the color of the crayon is. So 15 colors? 15 color words. And make sure that the color of the word is different than the word itself. Give you a few seconds. You never going to get to do homework today, did you? Okay, you guys ready? Okay, what I want you to do, and time yourself, I'm going to have Matt do his out loud for us, okay? I want you to read through the list of words as quickly as you can, and what I want you to do the first time is to read the word that you wrote down, okay? We'll see how this goes. What do you guys think? You think it's going to go fast, slow? What do you guys think? Probably pretty good readers, right? Let's try it. You guys ready? Matt, you want to go? Matt's going to read his out loud as fast as he can.
Red, blue, green, orange, purple, magenta, turquoise. I only had 7.
Okay, that's cool. Okay. Well, you guys read it pretty quick? Okay, the second time, now listen closely. This time I don't want you to read the word. I want you to read the color of the word. Okay? Don't read what the word says, read what the word is. So if the word is blue and it's written in a red crayon, right, you would read it red. Does that make sense? Okay, we're going to try it again. You guys ready? We're going to watch Matt. He's going to do it again. Do this yourselves too. It's kind of fun. All right, Matt, you ready? Go.
Blue, green, yellow, green, red, green,
Anybody else having trouble? You guys know why? Anybody? Because you're expert readers. You're excellent at reading. You do this all the time, okay? So you've compulsively tried to read the word. You basically cannot not read, and it's because you're really, really good at reading. Well, the reason why this is so important is because the way that we design our solutions, if we don't have this kind of stuff in mind, another example, and I have to go and double check this, I was looking for the reference on it, but in the B28 to B29, I picked out of a book, it was really interesting. They, supposedly the ejection seats, they had designed a new ejection seat style, right? So they were testing this stuff out, and they didn't have them before. Well, in the past, they would put the flap deployment lever right beside the seat, so the pilot would come in, reach down, deploy the flap, beautiful landing every time. So they changed this, and they said, we're going to put these new ejection seats in where we're going to put the controls. Well, you guys see where it's going, right? So they put the controls where? Right beside the ejection seat, right? So these very experienced Sage pilots, the best that we have, come flying in, out the top of the plane, bang, right? So it's really important that we understand these kind of features of who we are and how we interact with the world. Did you guys have fun with that? Is that cool? Go home and show that to your kids, your grandkids. It's usually kind of fun. Okay, so mobile, and I include wearables as just a subset of mobile, is just a smaller desktop experience. It looks like a duck, walks like a duck. Anybody remember when the internet first came on the scene, right? It looks kind of like a TV, it looks kind of like a computer, right? So it's not true at all. With wearables, especially in particular as a subset of mobility, you have to have a marine mentality. The goal is to get in, get something done, and get the heck out of there. We're not there to play around, right? Sit on your desktop, cruise the web, whatever. But generally when we're on our phones, we have some kind of a mission or whatever mobile device, especially when we talk about wearables, because it's usually in more of an industrial setting, right? So it's critical that we understand that. Now, the interactivity is more difficult, like on a mobile device or with a head-mounted display, because the controls are different. You don't want to sit there and dictate a novel on a headset. That's not going to be much fun, right? Same thing with your BlackBerry. Although some of us have gotten pretty good at a BlackBerry or smartphone, whatever you're using. But the experience is different, and so you need to make sure that you focus on what are you trying to accomplish with that particular device. Users want to use my technology or program, of course. This is like the best stuff ever. I mean, look at this gorgeous code that I wrote. Who can deny it's such an amazing product, right? Not at all true, right? Users simply don't care. I hate to break it to you guys, and it hurts my feelings too, because I'm a developer, right? I love doing this stuff, and I'm proud of the work that I do, but users simply don't care. Their goal is to get to done. So don't think that you can make it a field of dreams, and if I write this, they will come. Users simply want to get things done. All the rest is waste, okay? Nobody who ever bought a drill wanted a drill. They needed a hole. Keep that in mind. Basically, information technologies facilitate business processes in three fundamental ways. They control, they distribute, and they accelerate. Okay? The dangerous part is that accelerate piece, because I can take a really cruddy process and I can speed it up really fast, and it looks like it's better, but it's not. It's just a really fast, crappy process, right? So no garbage at the speed of light. That's the Gassel thing at the bottom. Is anybody aware of the kind of the space pen analogy? Any hands? Okay, cool. So the space pen analogy, and if you Snopes it, they say that it's anecdotal, but it still stands, right? Fairy tale. The story is that the space program was trying to figure out how do we write upside down in zero gravity, freezing temperatures, all that stuff. And so we spent all this money, and we developed this amazing pen that was pressurized, and these things exist, by the way, and they can write on frozen things, all that type of deal. And then at one point in the program, somebody said, I wonder what the Russians use. A pencil. Right? So the point of that, I think it was Einstein said, things should be as simple as possible, but no simpler. Don't try to force technology in as a solution, right? So technology is never a solution. It's an enabler for it. It's imperative to get it right the first time. Anybody have that problem with their companies? It seems like bigger corporations tend to be worse at this than the smaller ones. We try to do waterfall. We're getting better. We're starting to do scrums and things like that. But man, we will plan the perfect picnic down to the pattern on the tablecloth. It'll be gorgeous, right? And then what happens? You can't predict the weather. So now all of a sudden I got a mess on my hands. You're a lot better off to fail forward and fast. Mistakes are cheap. The understanding's clearer. And you go from a position of knowing, not thinking. You actually understand the domain that you're dealing with. Innovation is iterative. Try-storming always trumps blame-storming or brainstorming, right? I don't know if, does anybody recognize this salute? Not my fault, right? Somebody else's. Don't go down that path. It was Edison that said, I've not failed. I found 10,000 ways it won't work. So he, in building the light bulb. Bigger is more or better. If only I had a little more technology. If only I had more features and functions and bells and whistles and lions and tigers and bears. Not true, right? If you love your customers, give them less, not more. They don't want more features and functions. They want less frustration, less hassle. They want to get to done. That's the whole point. Again, comparison engines by nature, when you give a lot of extra features and functions and information, we drown in it. Anybody ever go to and it's not a slam on Cheesecake Factory, but anybody go to Cheesecake Factory? You feel a little sense of stress when they hand you that phone book of a menu? You're just like, oh my God, really? I mean, I just wanted a cheeseburger. Now I've got 57 different options on cheeseburgers alone. So what we find is that we're good to up to about 5 to 7 options. And after that, we get confused. We check out. You'll notice this if you pay attention. Kind of the stress level comes up, and you say, just the cheeseburger. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. This applies to subjects. So what's interesting is, any guys who are from academia, I'm a PhD in human factor psychology, where a lot of the stuff is coming from. You go through agonizing trials to get your power up, right, on your experimentation, because you have to have statistical significance to publish and all this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? 6 to 8 subjects, pretty much you're going to be in the ballpark. I found that probably 70, 80% on average, I can ferret out most of what the problems are if I can get 6 to 8 subjects. Just in general. It takes 9 months to have a baby. You can have a whole lot of people do it, a whole lot of women do it. It's still going to take 9 months. I'm sorry, it is what it is. So more is not always better. IT creates the solution for the user. Anybody have this situation where you have IT people and they go back in a room and they kind of huddle up and they have this secret little thing and I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV and I think the mechanic needs this thing. And so they talk about it and they get all excited and they create this thing and they walk out to the mechanics and they hand it to them. They're so proud of, ta-da, and they hand their baby over and they go, meh, not so interested, right? Because they're busy, they got stuff to do. The other thing is you're really violating that trust because you're assuming, right? No, we like to buy into, we don't like to be sold onto. A really critical part of the solutions that we develop is that buy-in. You can't step on your end user that way. It's really disrespectful. Don't do things to or for them, do things with them. Partner at the hip, do the diligence, walk through the process. Collaborative relationship is of paramount import. They have to own the solution at the end of the day. We get to walk away, go do something else. These guys have to live with that stuff. It's really critical that they own it. It has to be their baby. IT improves all things. Anybody seen this app that, this is starting to get a little bit of age on it, but they make these apps where, look at this, with my smartphone, I can pull it out and I can unlock my door on my car. Well, that's awesome as a backup, right? But let's see, what did it take before? With my key fob, I just walk over, click it, and the door opens, right? Or a key, old key, remember those little pointed thing? You unlock your door, right? It's a couple steps. Now I have to find my phone, unlock my phone, find the app, find the feature in the app, unlock my door. Did I really gain anything? Probably not, right? So, and I put the Rube Goldberg thing where you want a piece of toast and it, the marble goes and all that kind of stuff. Don't build Rube Goldberg solutions. Make this stuff as simple as you possibly can. As fun as it is as technologists, the end users simply don't care. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Absolutely wrong, right? We want to, in fact, be our own best/worst competitors. Excellence is a verb, not a noun. It's not a destination, it's a path. It's a way that you act. Blind adherence to tradition is a fool's errand. There's no value in doing something really well that should never have been done in the first place. So stop and ask about, why am I doing this in the first place? Does this make sense? Okay, Brian, so you complained and you went on ad nauseum about all this stuff, about why we're not supposed to do this and that and the other and whatever. So what's the solution? How do we fix this stuff? Well, so the first step is we have to really understand what are the real requirements. What's what I call the soul of the intention? Why are you here in the first place? What is Boeing? Anybody? Your transportation company? Anybody else? Guess? A lot of times I hear airplane company. I would posit that Boeing's not an airplane company. We're actually a connection company. What we do is we coalesce things in a time and place, right? We happen to be really good at airplanes. We've been doing it for over 100 years. But we're not really an airplane company. And that's what I mean, is we have to get down to what is the soul of the intention? Why are we really doing this, right? It's really important. There's a really great book, if you guys have an opportunity to read, by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. Anybody here Start With Why? Excellent book. Easily one of the best business books I've ever read. And he talks about this thing called the golden circles, where most of us jump straight to the what, because that's how we monetize our why, right? Most of us don't even know what our why is. The why is at the center. If you think about a bullseye, why is at the center, around that you have a how, and then what is the outside part. Well, this is this fatal thinking if you don't understand your why. The most recent example is Kodak. Right? They pioneered a lot of these technologies that we had in terms of digital photography and all these different kinds of things. The problem is they thought they were a photographic company. No, they were a memory preservation company. That was their goal. That's why they were there in the first place. Now, they happened to do that with chemicals and papers, which was their how, and their what was the chemicals and papers and the printers and the stuff they sold. But when the rest of the world went digital, they were stuck thinking that they were a photographic company. And if Boeing ever for a moment stops understanding the fact that we're a connection company, we could suffer the same fate. So think about that. Take inventory of your different companies and what you guys do. Go out and actually observe your end users. What's the overall goal? What's the value? We heard about this all day long. It gives me goosebumps actually to hear this, because a lot of times we jump straight to the technology. We don't think about why we're there using it. What role does the information play? How does it flow? Who's your customer? Who's your supplier? Who's your customer's customer and your supplier's supplier? It's really important that you understand that entire value chain. What are they doing before and after interacting with your product? Are they hands-free? Is it a loud environment? Is it visually noisy? Is it auditorily noisy? Is it hot? These are all things that we have to take into account as we design our solutions. Who's the owner of all this stuff, right? Critical questions we have to ask. Second thing, go out and do real-world observations. Don't guess at this stuff. Go join the partners at the hip and truly be a partner. Help them understand, through reflecting. And tell them up front, say, hey, I'm going to ask you a lot of really stupid questions. I apologize. I'm a dummy. I don't know. Again, hat in hand, bended knee. And be humble and ask them. And the interesting thing is, through this process, you're going to have these epiphany moments where they go, wow, I hadn't really thought about that. Really cool way to do this when you're out there doing real-world observations. Anybody heard of a thing called VPA, or verbal protocol analysis? So I'm stealing shamelessly from usability techniques, right? With VPA, what I do is I actually observe the person doing their work out in the wild, out in their real job. And as they do it, I have them do what's called think aloud protocol. So they literally say out loud, what's the thought process they're going through as they're accomplishing the tasks. The really cool thing about that, and I'm talking about lean tools, right? You value stream map out the process. If you use VPA, you're going to capture all the stuff that's going on in the wetware, not just what's going on with the hardware, if you will. Really powerful technique. And what I found is easily, I end up with value stream maps that are twice as long, sometimes 3 or 4 times as long as what I can physically see. And the more knowledge-based the process is, the more that's true. And then after you get that together, that becomes your as-is. That's your baseline. That's where you start. So this is a little bit about VPA. You guys, this will be available for you guys if you want to check it out. 2 times at the VPA, there's a retroactive, which is where I go and I kind of simulate what I'm doing, like in a back office or something. The second one is concurrent. That's when I'm actually watching somebody on the job. Concurrent is absolutely the best way to go if you can. Sometimes it's not possible. That's okay. Retroactive is fine. But if you want to get your best VPA results, go with concurrent. And I'm happy to answer questions if you guys have questions around this. And there's some mapping that we've been talking about. The second picture there, that's actually very recently. This is out on the tanker, out in the factory at Boeing. We're out there actually with the mechanics, the QA inspectors, the shop leads, and we're asking them and watching and observing. A lot of times what people do will tell you far more than what they say out of their mouths, for all the reasons that we just talked about earlier, right? So after you get that all together, you have your value stream map out there. Then you want to make sure that it's accurate. So you walk through it and kind of simulate the process. Make sure you captured all the steps. Make sure that all this is agreeable with the person who you've been shadowing. A lot of times you'll pick up a couple of nuanced things. For everything in there, you have basically value-added, non-value-added, and non-value but necessary actions. What you want to do is immediately get rid of all the non-value-added steps in that process. And as many as you can of the non-value but necessary steps. Sometimes you'll have a non-value but necessary step that sets up for a value-added step, and those have to remain. In those cases, you want to try to combine those and make a value-added step out of them, if that makes sense. When you get done, you're going to have what's called a future state map. And this is what you're trying to drive to. This is a cleaner, more streamlined process that's comprised almost entirely, ideally, of value-added steps, okay? Go back and now you want to prototype that and test out all the assumptions in that business process. Notice I didn't talk about technology yet, right? It's not a technology. The head fake in all this, it's not about the technology. The technology just enables a good business process. And I'm not too proud. I'll sneak in the door with, oh yeah, we got HoloLens and we got Google Glass, and they'll get all excited, and I'll say, hey, that's awesome, yeah, let me try this, and they get real happy about it. And then I come in with the homework stuff, and this is what we do. But the cool thing about it is if you guys will do this, you can actually derive days reduction, head count reduction, steps. I mean, all these different kind of things. You can monetize that, and you can go back with an ROI to your executive management, and you can actually request funds because you know with a pretty good degree of certainty what you can expect out of the activities that you're getting ready to undertake. Then we turn around, well, so I'll go back, but then you turn around and you look at your technology. Again, technology controls, accelerates, and distributes, right? So you find out what's appropriate for what I'm trying to do. We talked a little bit about Space Pen. Tales from the Trenches. So I'll talk a little bit about a story called The Whole Truth. So I was a process engineering analyst once upon a time, and I was given the task, an enviable task, of taking about $7 million in capital funds and figuring out how we were going to spend it for my manufacturing business unit. So I got there and I started looking around, and I had this Christmas list of things that everybody wanted. And I go down and I find this, purchase these new machine tool bits, right? So, okay, cool. Well, are the bits really worn? So I go out and I check out in the factory where they're doing the work on the machine. They're pretty chewed up, they're pretty bad. Okay, cool. What does this bit do? So I start researching it. Well, I find out that, first of all, we're incurring about 9 days of flow time to take these parts, they're struts, and we ship them off to have these precision holes bored into these parts, thousandths of an inch tolerance, really tight tolerance, right? Less than the thickness of a hair. Well, what does that hole do, right? So the 5 whys. So I go down the line and I look in the blueprints. The call-outs aren't even really specific. They seem to kind of float to some degree. Well, nothing happens by accident on an airplane, I guarantee it, right? So why is that? What's going on? So I went down and I found the guy further down the line after those holes were bored. Well, what happens to those holes? Well, he was gluing a sloppy plastic grommet in that thing and passing wires through it. It was a lightning hole and a wiring pass-through for that strut. Why are we boring a thousandth of a tolerance inch hole in this particular part? It's ridiculous, right? So anyway, I got with engineering, and we went out and checked it out, and that's when I found out what this really was. I went to Ace Hardware for about $12. I bought a hole saw. We measured it, made sure it was within specification. Went to the liaison engineering folks, and we reduced that from 9 days of flow down to about 15 minutes per spar. Now, there's many of these on the plane. There's a lot of these things. I don't know what that equated to in terms of savings, but that all came from asking why, right? It's amazing. This stuff is just all around you if we just open our eyes and look. So it's pretty incredible. There's the money we saved, and yay, we're all excited. Yay! So anyway, to wrap this up, remember, technology in a nutshell, it controls, it distributes, and it accelerates. The acceleration pace is really, really dangerous because you can speed up really garbage processes, and they look better, but they're just faster. It's all about the process. Bake it in, don't paint it on, okay? No one wants to use your program, your technology, your whatever. They want to get done. They don't care. Nobody who bought a drill wanted a drill. They needed a hole. Remember that. They will tolerate, at best, your technology or your solution if it'll help them do something in a better, faster, cheaper way. And technology, again, is an indiscriminate facilitator. It'll facilitate good processes and bad ones. And that acceleration piece is really dangerous because they look the same. User involvement and buy-in is critical. The greatest benefits are reaped not from IT, but rather from optimizing the business process. That's the head fake. Ask Peggy. Is Peggy in here? Peggy will back me up on this. Any of you guys that have done a lot of this stuff, especially if you got a lean background, you know that it's not about the technology, right? The process is define the user's intention, streamline the business process, and then identify the appropriate technologies, again, control, accelerate, and distribute. If you do that in that order, intention, process, then technology, you end up with a force multiplier, not an additive benefit. It's incredible the power of this. It seems like such a simple thing, but yet we don't do this very often. The benefits of gathering real requirements, not desirements, is you future-proof your company. We've been building airplanes for over 100 years at Boeing. Guess what we're going to build tomorrow? Probably an airplane, right? We built them out of wood, we built them out of cloth, we built them out of aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber, right? But still basically the same thing. Nail the customer requirement, and the customers will actually use their solution, and they'll love you for it. And guess what? They'll invite you back. They'll say, wow, you respected me, you understand what I needed, and you helped me to achieve success. And finally, a closing thought. The more perfect a machine becomes, the more invisible they are behind their function. Perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, when there's nothing more to take away. At the climax of its evolution, the machine conceals itself entirely. The ironic part of all this stuff is if we do our job really, really well as technologists, nobody notices, right? A little bit disheartening, but the goal is not to use technology, it's to get something done. So anyway, thank you for your time. I hope it was entertaining. Good
job.
Appreciate it.
So do we have a question for Brian before we let him go? It's an incredibly complex organization, complex value chain. You've been there quite a while. What's the one thing that always seems to surprise you when you're either working with the teams or doing these projects? Anything popping to mind?
Well, so a little bit about my background. I'm actually a certified sheet metal and composites mechanic. I mean, I've been all through airplanes ad nauseum. And even with the background that I have, I'm not stupid enough to assume that I know, that I can outthink the guys and gals who actually do this job today or disrespect them. So it's always amazing to me because internally, I'm kind of a little bit proud, like, yeah, I did that. I kind of know about it, right? But not outwardly. And I go and test it, and it's amazing how many times I'm wrong. It's embarrassing, honestly. But if anything, that sense of humility is so powerful. And if you're willing to humble yourself and actually go out and find out instead of guess, it's such a powerful thing. It's so simple, but we don't do it very well often.
So look, that's a great way to wrap up today's session. Let's thank Brian again for a great presentation.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.